This is Understanding U.S. Government. I'm your host, Mr. Giese. In this episode, we will be discussing the President's job description. The question we will be trying to answer is what are the roles and qualifications of the office of the President? In order to answer that question, we will be discussing the numerous roles of the President and formal qualifications necessary to become President. Let's try to answer that question now. First, let's look at what the President actually does. It can't be too much, right? Well, to start off, the President is the leader or chief of a few different roles. Starting off, the President is the Chief of State. The President is basically the face of the government. When citizens and other nations think of the United States, they think of the President. With this comes the role of Chief Citizen. As the President is the ceremonial head of state, they are also to be a model of citizenship for all the citizens of the United States. The Chief Executive is, as authorized by the Constitution, where all the power of the executive branch resides. We know that this does not make the President all-powerful because the framers were fearful of a person having too much power, but it does allow the President to express the will of the executive branch or be at the top of the executive bureaucracy. Next, the President is the Chief Administrator. This means that the President is the director of the enormous executive branch. That means they are to direct the millions of employees that work in the executive branch, and all of those that work in the executive branch look to the President as their boss. The Commander-in-Chief role makes the President the leader of the armed forces, but it too has its limits, as we discussed with the legislative branch. However, when dealing with foreign affairs, the President needs to be able to command and able to fully utilize military forces if necessary. The Chief Diplomat is where the President is the main authority on foreign policy or dealing with other countries. We'll discuss more of this role in further detail in another video. Which brings us to the Chief Legislator. We know and have discussed who is responsible for writing and passing bills, but the person that shapes the overall shape of congressional legislation is the President's initiation of public policy. Congress takes into account what the President says during the State of the Union and then acts upon that plan. Finally, the role of Chief of Party allows the President to be the face of whatever political party of which they are a member. They are often in the news, and this does get the message out of the party in a more deliberate and organized manner. This lends itself to being more organized in years of elections, either presidential or otherwise. So does this sound like something you could do? Before a person in the United States can be the responsible party for all of these roles, they must fulfill a set of formal requirements to become president. Those consist of being at least 35 years old, being a natural-born citizen, and being a resident in the United States for 14 years. If you're able to check off all those requirements, then technically you could run for president of the United States. Of course, you'll have to win the election, but we'll get into that later. Let's say you do become president. There are some limits. The limits that we'll look at are the amount of time that you are able to keep this position. First, the president is elected to a 4-year term, and the president can only serve 2 of these terms. For a long time, this was just a custom that presidents stuck to. However, after FDR was elected to 4 terms, the 22nd Amendment was added to the Constitution. This amendment established the 2-year limit in writing and further extended it to a 10-year limit as well. This barely scratches the surface of what the president does on a day-to-day basis, but now you are able to see what the president's many roles are, the formal requirements to become a president, and what amount of time the president has once they are elected.